Hello, beautiful beings. We are going to talk today about something that is going to make you feel so much better about what you eat, how you feel from what you eat. It actually is the piece of the puzzle that helps us understand why we have troubles with some foods, don't have troubles with other foods, have trouble with some foods sometimes, but not other times. It can be so frustrating trying to figure out what makes us feel good, what doesn't. And so I'm going to tell you a little piece of the puzzle today that is going to finally demystify this for you once and for all. And it's really empowering information because once you understand this, you realize that one, it's not necessarily about what not to eat. And it also is not that, oh, this food, I shouldn't eat it anymore, can never eat it again. Or, there's certain foods that diets tell you shouldn't eat. They're good for nobody. All of that is just going to be thrown out the window for today because I'm going to show you and you are going to feel enabled to figure out for yourself what it is that you should and should not be eating. And so, with that, I'm here today and we're going to talk about the histamine bucket because it is going to be the calculation that's going to put it all in place and help you live your best life feeling healthy no matter the circumstances that are going on around you and as well as what are going on inside you. Because when it comes to histamine, both are a huge factor and you have more control over them than you realize. So, today, let's actually talk about the histamine bucket. And so, I have my handy dandy little bucket. Now, I do want to show you this. It is a little love bucket. But if you know me, I'm going to tell you that whenever we're looking for the solutions of what you should eat, what you should be doing, how to feel better, how to get healthy, what's going on in your body, we can be sure that is always our answer. So it actually is no coincidence. But for the purpose of this, we're using this as what I call the histamine bucket. And that is because what we don't understand with our system is that everything we're exposed to, everything we think, everything we put in our system, every way we move our body, all play roles in what and how our body deals with those things. But we're living in a world right now where we are in overload. And so I like to imagine it as if we are the bucket, our systems are in overload, so much so that everything is overflowing. So just imagine that everything you're putting in, everything you're experiencing, everything you're exposed to is going into this bucket. This bucket is you. And every once in a while, it will just be too much and it will start to overflow. And so that's what happens with everything that we are exposed to. So, for example, say we're in allergy season and pollen's really bad, then that's something that's already going into your bucket that you don't have a lot of control over, but it's filling it up a little bit. Now imagine that you've got a lot of stress going on. So that's going to fill up your bucket. These are all things that your body has to work to try and help you deal with. That's going into our histamine bucket. Now, you've eaten some foods that aren't necessarily what you were striving to put in your system, or they may just be foods that your body has a sensitivity to, or they can just be have additives that are causing a problem. But now you've got your bucket up to here. And so then you spend a day where you don't sleep very well, you're just not feeling rest and rejuvenated. Now you're up to the top. What happens here is that anything you do past this point is going to cause such an extreme histamine reaction that it will be noticeable to you. Your body's been dealing with it, dealing with it, dealing with it, dealing with it, but not able in time to get it down so that you fill it back up. When it keeps piling on too much, too fast, too many things, your body doesn't have the ability to work through it, decrease it, get it down, so that everything you add back from that point on is going in from this point up. And so I'm going to use a few examples. So for people that might be gluten sensitive, say you went out one night partying. So now you've got a lot of alcohol in your system. You're dehydrated. You're probably didn't sleep very well or went to bed really late. And now you're not feeling so well the next day and you're hungover, you're craving things. So you eat a whole lot of bread or you eat a whole lot of sugars and sweets. And now you just feel like a big, puffy, bloated Stay Puft person. That's because your body just tried and tried and tried to do it. And then it just has what can be even perceived as an allergic reaction, because that's what histamine is trying to help us deal with these overloads in our system. And so just everything feels like it's going wrong. But a lot of people that feel that we're dealing with weight or are gaining weight actually, as well, or maybe just have this histamine overload going on. So, especially when you feel a lot of people who work out a lot and feel like they should be more toned, but their body's puffy, or they have a lot of discomfort in their gut and it just feels extra bloated or isn't processing well, or you just have that puffy face that isn't kind of your normal look. These can all sort of be the general histamine inflammation type reactions we are having to the overload. And so quite often we're having this, we're looking for that one thing that set us off, right? And so people will look often to a food. And it's not to say that foods don't have a histamine level in them. So they can play a factor. Maybe it's not that you have an allergy or sensitivity to them, but maybe they were just eaten in a time where your system was close to overload and they were the piece that took you over the top of the pail. So we can look to common allergens as sources of where these may be. So a lot of people will see some sensitivities to dairy. And I feel like dairy is one of the common ones that people will often say, sometimes I'm okay with it, sometimes I'm not. I don't really understand. It makes no sense. And so it could be simply that you just ate too much of that product. But it could also be that you just put it in the system when the pail was close to overflowing. And so it can also be that, say, you had a high histamine, like breads and wheats are high histamine, dairies are high histamine. And so then you've also got other ingredients that are often used as fillers or processing in food. So you have stuff like corn or soya. And so all of these things can play a role. And so if you had a couple of meals that are high in a bunch of these or a few of these and had enough of those types of meals, then you may feel like it caused a problem. A lot of this can make sleep very uncomfortable. And so people will then feel like they're not sleeping very well, which then adds to the histamine situation. You've got a tired system that just can't seem to deal with these things, as well as when you overeat. So when you just eat too much, it can be too much for your system to process. And you've got another factor that's added to your histamine pail. So we know that as well, some medications can make us more susceptible. Some periods of the day can make us more susceptible. And just know that stress is one of the hugest factors. And how this works is, imagine that when your body is stressed, it only does survival mode type of things, right? So dealing with histamine or bringing down inflammation, or dealing with a product that you've taken in that's hard to digest, are not going to be high on your priority list if you're dealing with what feels like more survival type situations. So that's where stress will come into play here, because you simply aren't in the mode to deal with any of these things. Those processes have been shut off while you're in that survival mode. So your body isn't going to work on these external, not immediate type of things that have to happen. And so bringing down your histamine levels, bringing down your inflammation, calming all of your reaction to certain things or overload are not going to be the top of the priority list. So you're going to have to bring down your stress. But what's nice about this, and there's so many perks to knowing this, so don't get discouraged by this information. What happens is it's actually very encouraging because now you know that every little effort you make can help bring this down. So when you know, oh, well, I didn't sleep very well last night, but I can maybe get an extra hour of sleep tonight. That's really not going to do very much. It is. It's going to be a little piece of the puzzle. And so, if you take the time for a 10-minute breathing or meditation or time out, that's another little piece of the puzzle. If you go for a walk or do a 10-minute exercise and you feel like you need to do a big one to make a difference, don't. It's another little piece of the puzzle. And so then when you put really healthful foods in and know that your body's getting the vitamins and minerals it needs, and you're not going to have an overload of something just because you're kind of feeling crappy, you've added another little piece of the puzzle. And that, my friends, is how we bring down the histamine bucket. And the lower the bucket is, the more you are able to deal with the everyday things that are thrown at you. And so that when something big happens, if you're down here, you can handle up here. You still don't have it overflowing. And every time you bring it down and it goes up a little bit and comes down and goes up a little bit, your body is set up to do that for you. So you can have the foods that you might be a little bit sensitive to when everything's in a good position. You can go and indulge once in a while, or take a day's break from exercising, or maybe not have your most healthy eating day, as long as your bucket is down. So you want to know the things in daily life that bring your bucket down, and you want to know the things that add up. And so a lot of people will say to me, especially with nightshades, they're a really good example. So tomatoes and green peppers, and actually people will even find it with different colored peppers. Oh, I react to these sometimes and not other times. And there can be a few different factors. There can be, what might be on the pepper or the tomato, or how it was grown, or what it was exposed to, or the content of the enzymes and vitamins and minerals in it. But it can also be how high your histamine bucket was. So try your best to always be conscious. And then you can start to watch what you see happens in your body. So a lot of people will see that their digestion is off, or constipation, or diarrhea, or bloated feeling. People might notice acid reflux, or they might notice sort of puffiness in their arms or their face. They might notice achiness in their joints, extra fatigue. These can all be from the factors that go in your bucket, but they can also be from the factors that have added up in your bucket. So not one of them alone is the cause, but all of them together can make a huge difference. So when you're trying to feel better, take everything into account. They all play a role on how well you feel, how good your body is helping you. They all can have a little piece of the pie. And even when it comes to foods like wheats or grains or corn or rice even, they all have a histamine level. A lot of foods have a natural histamine level in them. So it also doesn't mean that there's something in you that's wrong or not working. It can just mean that those levels, with everything else that was going on, are causing you grief. And the more you tune in with yourself and pay attention to these and see how you react with food and see how food makes you feel, the more information you have about your bucket. Your bucket is your signal from your body. It's telling you when it's had too much, when it's in overload, and when it needs your support. It's also telling you when it needs a break. And so some people will even benefit from decreasing their eating time. And I don't like to use the word intermittent fasting because that has such varied connotations that can seem like very extreme eating. But that's not what we're talking about. You just may want to decrease the time you eat before, or sorry, increase the time you eat before bed, increase the time that you eat when you start eating after waking up, like move it later, decrease the snacks that you have between meals, and even decrease the amount you eat in a meal. All of those give your body a break, help it restore its bucket, and help everything just come down in a way that will allow it to do what it needs to do. And most of all, we know the stress factor. We can't really deny that. So there's a lot going on in your system all the time. The histamine bucket is a good clue to know that there's just sometimes we can't even really know what it is that is causing the most grief. We can't know that one thing will make a big difference. And especially when you're trying lots of things and nothing seems really obvious, you can be sure you're dealing with a histamine bucket. When you notice sometimes something bothers you, next time it doesn't, you're probably dealing with a histamine bucket overflow. And so the bucket is you. You want to do your best to love it, to take care of it, and pay attention to what it's trying to tell you. Histamine reactions, allergic reactions, inflammation, pain, joint pain, fatigue are all ways your body is trying to tell you it needs something. First off, it usually needs love. Next, you need to pay attention to what it needs or doesn't need or needs less of. And then you need to know that when it needs a break, whether it's from eating, whether it's from stress, whether it's just rest, so often your body will tell you that it needs a break and you need to listen. That's giving yourself love, but that's also helping bring your histamine bucket down. So, as always, my friends, remember that you are a beautiful being just as you are. When you embrace your true beauty and prioritize your wellness and self-care, you shine even brighter. And this is what illuminates your path to your fullest potential. Take care.